If I had $1 every time I came across a sexy fishman, I'd use it for more sexy fishmen. I am a simple lad. Welcome to Hold Your Tongues. No, really. Hold Your Tongues. Now, I can't really show much of the game without spoiling it, so this is just going to be my excuse to show off the sexy fishman who might have some interesting taste. I will warn you that this game is both gory and deals with some difficult themes, so please keep these warnings in mind. Sitting at the edge of a cliff, I stared. I had grown desperate to catch a glimpse of the creatures whispered about when others felt safe enough from the night. Impudent men who had a taste of human flesh grew into monstrous shapes. Their transformation was deemed repulsive and sinful. I hardly cared. They had ascended and freed themselves from their constraints. I longed to do the same, but it was yet another thing men kept to themselves. For now, I could only hope to learn from what little I had heard. One had been sighted near the shore, and so I came here to see, to know for sure. Yet time had passed. The moon, once high in the sky, was moving away. The waters below had shared none of their secrets. How much more could I wait? How much faith had I left? How much resignation? The answer was one I feared. I took my eyes off the abyss to glance at my pocket watch. 6 hours had passed. 6 hours of nothing but waves crashing and crashing as they met the end of their sea. Each replacing another, only to be replaced again by the one that followed. I had lost count. They didn't leave much behind. Salty drops on my cheeks were all they had. One fell into my eye. Lifting my head, I cried it out, and as this last tear rolled down, I saw long hair splayed around a face I couldn't make, a tail of reds glistening under the softest light. 2 eyes I couldn't stare into, but sensed creeping into my very soul. I stood up. My feet were burning, my knees were shaking, my legs threatened to falter. My everything begged me to stop. I trapped their silent wails deep down my throat. I took the only step I needed to. It was my choice, my fall. Between her arms and sides were the sky and its stars. In shaping her celestial wings, they granted him light. When her feet took off the cliff, they followed her down. Unseen shackles weighted her body. And yet, for a fraction of time, she seemed to fly. He jumped. She entered his waters. It didn't take long. He had caught her. My throat was dry. My hair stuck to my face. My head was full to the brim. My back hurt, and my chest felt empty. My knees were freezing, and my feet lost to the cold. My nose smelled things it shouldn't have, things I had been wanting to breathe in. Sea and decay. I opened my eyes. "Hello there!" They instantly found his. Neither of us blinked. We took in everything of the other. Seeing wasn't enough. To me, nothing would ever be. Still, I didn't dare to move. Nor did I ask if he was satisfied. "I want wings." The words were easy to understand. The sentence they formed wasn't quite so. I didn't know what to say. I wanted to wait for more. For an explanation. Something to latch onto. Time and silence gave me none. Slowly sliding up my arms, a wet hand found a shoulder to cage under its nails. "Teach me." I pressed my teeth around my tongue, pinning it still. It prevented even the tiniest of cries from leaking into what ears he had. What answer could I safely give when his intentions seemed so unclear? Carefully, I released my tongue. Calmly, I inhaled. What kind of wings? Did he care about their size, their colors, The birds they came from. Big wings. How seemingly simple. His eyes sparkle like those of an innocent child. What for? He pointed to his back, extended his arms, and smiled. You want wings? Why would he when the depths were wholly his? Was nothing ever truly enough? I had no wish to know. How? You want me to find a way? Yeah. Where was I supposed to start? What materials could I use? Did he want feathers? Should they be assembled on a solid metallic structure? How would I fix the finished product to that body of his? With more metal, some kind of rope. Also, I am so sorry to say this, but have you seen his body? His body is insane! God damn. Anyway, on his back, his arms. Would it stay attached? Could I make it work? Could he fly? I chewed on my tongue. Can I take a look at your back? I held out my hands and limbs for him to consider. How much of a threat could I ever pose? Thank you. He turned around. Even then, I was much more vulnerable than he ever could be. That much was clear. Tell me if you want me to stop. His naked back was different from the one I had come to know over the years. The color looked unusual. The lack of warmth felt disturbing, but the bones and muscles under had to work the same. Both were distinctly human. It wouldn't hurt to try. Even if they proved themselves to be useless, he could still have wings to show in the end. I looked down. Are these tongues? The smile on his face was the widest I've so far seen. It made me crave for his teeth and all that he could reveal. He pressed his hands to his chest, proud and full, about to confess. I have more. One after the other, he ripped the stitches that ran down his abdomen. My fingers froze, wishing for nothing more than tracing along the bloody dots he left behind. Then it was my mouth, tightly closed, and then my eyes, completely locked. Flaps of skin parted ways to have his insides exposed. Why do you have so many tongues in there? His ribcage showed none of the organs it should have had. It overflowed with a multitude of tongues. Okay, on one hand, this is horrifying. On the other hand, what you gonna do with all those tongues? My feathers. My teeth released the only tongue I had. Okay, and I know some of you are already commenting down there. Why isn't Lion asking where the tongues came from? And to that I say, let a man have his hobbies. Come on. They would be heavy. I'll need time. Don't worry, I'm not running away. I'll need to work on your wings. And I'll need to find your limits. How much could his body take? We can meet here at night. I could still see all that his chest held. You can sew yourself back up and keep the tongues for now. Red and whites were once again hidden under his skin. What kind of needle and thread would he use? I stared. Too hard, perhaps. Could you show me another time? Yeah. Thank you. I turned around, hardly concealing my trembling limbs. We can meet in 2 nights. 1 night. Fine. Without ever looking back, I walked. If my eyes caught sight of him again, my everything would scream for me to never leave what I just found. That night, for the first time since I left, the rocks I drowned on provided me with warmth and comfort. Together with plans, hopes, and dreams, they lulled me to sleep. After locating washed-up trees on the shore and adding sea fennel to my supply, I let myself rest under a tree. Even now, steady breaths sounded wrong to my ears. Repeating that I was safe, that I was learning, that I was moving on wasn't enough. Part of me still heard and pictured his naked body, calm, unmoving, even after everything. In that moment, lying next to me, he seemed like the man, Eric, the one I knew and loved. Yet, This very man had hurled at me the disgusting insides I should have noticed before. A leaf brushed against my cheek. It fell to the ground, joining others. I looked up to the clouds that hit the sun and filtered its light. I should go down. My basket felt lighter. Let me carry it for you. No, it's fine. You don't have to bear it all alone. His hand was on my arm, unbelievably warm. It isn't that heavy. I wouldn't let my eyes stray to the side. I don't need you for something such as this. Is the matter too unimportant for me to waste my energy on? Do you think your husband so weak? Or do you consider yourself too good to need my being? Scalding, blistering, searing. The skin he had marked with his touch burned and begged for me to do something. The screams trapped within grew too close to my tender throat. I could hear them. I could even listen. But it was pointless. I couldn't help them. I couldn't answer their cries. I couldn't carry them out. I couldn't do anything for them. We couldn't do anything for each other. Away from them I ran. It wasn't a good idea. My heels hammered the stupidity in me until I tripped and collapsed. Palms in the dirt helped me keep face. Tears trickled down as I slowly raised myself once more. I wasn't clean enough to wipe any of it. I shook my hands in the air before rubbing them against my skirt. Nothing is spilled. I gathered all I could, rearranged the fabric on top of my basket, picked it up and set my feet walking. Nothing will. He laughed. Come here. I'll hold these hands of yours. I didn't bother. I was too far for him to warm my heart. Too far for him to rub my back until I could breathe. Too far for him to bring me a soothing tea. Too far for him to share stories of birds flying. Too far for him to wipe my tears. Too far for him to soften my cheeks with his lips. Too far for him to paint me a smile with the brushes he cherished. If he wasn't next to my body, reminding me of how sweet and gentle he had been, I had no need for fear. He couldn't be there. Listen to me. You don't have to do this. Please. You're making me do it. I never. Are you raising your voice at me? No, please, listen. I'll come back when you're ready to listen. My words were lost to the wind. What was I for him to mind me at all? He left me empty, unable to think or ask for more. All I could do was keep on walking. So I walked and walked, alone, in silence. I made my way back to the more forgiving sea. With my feet cleared off their boots, I stepped into the water. The familiar cold embraced and held the pieces of my being together. I bent, immersing my fingers, soaking my sleeves. The salt kissing my wounds was to me a gentle reminder. No matter how much it stuck to my skin, the past didn't have to drag me back. I couldn't run away. I had and would continue. What are you doing? I didn't notice you. Looking down, my hands had grown quite red. I'm sorry. Bits had been peeled off here and there. They were dirty. That's all. Are they clean? Now? Well, I hope they are. Yeah? What's up? He disappeared underneath, his form melting with his surroundings. Bubbles floated upward, one after the other, growing closer with each until they stopped right in front of me. His teeth grazed my knuckles. My left hand found warmth in his all-encompassing mouth. His tongue softened my open wounds. Pain and surprise struck. I couldn't scream. I couldn't move away. I couldn't tell how much was missing. I could only feel the burning pain this unnatural emptiness brought me. Tears ran down as he tenderly licked the space he had separated from flesh and bones. It shouldn't have been so healing and comforting. Not so quickly. Not so easily. How simple could it really be? My left hand had been released. The right one lay in his. He pressed his forehead against my wrist. Then, in my palm, he dropped the prize he had seized. My fingers! Two fingers, smaller than the others. I felt nothing but lighter. Why? He kept his mouth closed into a smile. Well, it's fine, I guess. Still, could you keep them, please? Keep one of the two? With my ring finger now his, I sat on a dry rock near. I have possible materials in mind. I'll ask you to see what you can find in places I can't reach myself. I can draw the element for you to get a clearer idea of what we're looking for too. But before any of that, I need you to trust me. I don't understand your body well enough. To see how it works, I need to harm you a little. Do you trust me? Are you sure? I trust you. The little word eased the tension in my muscles. I'll need to get a couple of tools for this. I'll be right back. My face was inches away from his chest, my eyes as close as they could be, my nose soon on his skin. He didn't seem to mind, and I hope to God that his chest is not too lewd for YouTube. I've had this happen before. With all he kept inside, he must have repeatedly opened and sewed himself back, and yet there were no visible marks of stitches he could have made in the past. I'm going to touch you. His skin was smooth, refreshing and raw, parts of it already joined together, where they had been fully detached not too long ago. I brought my fingers near the green spots. Their unevenness was reassuring. What do you use for thread? Around his index, he wrapped 2 strands of hair and swiftly ripped them off. I took one for myself, held it between my hands, and pulled. No matter how much I tried breaking it, one of my hands always slid off the strand. Can I keep it? More. Right. You have plenty. Thank you. I set it into my pocket. Come closer, please. I presented him with a knife and let go of the handle I had warmed. It was the sharpest I could have made it to be. Make it wide enough for a finger to go in. I pointed to his side. Not bigger than that. He cut flesh with an ease, a confidence I could never have. Now, next to it, with a nail, please. He handed me the knife and did as I had asked. He showed no signs of pain. Off my hands, I made a cup of salt water and poured it on top. Still, he had showed no signs of pain. Soon enough, the second wound started closing itself. Sleek skin would eventually hide everything. All the while, the first one became a scar. Okay. I need you to open yourself up like you did with your nail. But after, I'll put this pen in. He glared at it for a moment before planting half a finger in. It didn't seem like a lot to him. He simply looked back expectantly. Tell me if it hurts. The pen went in. Please? I looked up. He was smiling. It doesn't hurt? He shook his head. Do you not feel pain? Again, he shook his head. I stepped away. I'll rest for a bit. If something feels wrong, please call me. I grabbed a shawl that somehow shielded me from the cold of night. I'll be close enough to hear. I turned my back to him. Bright lights on the other side of my eyelids took me out of my sleep. Burning, I sprang up, only to find him calm and unaffected. Did nothing happen? Nothing. I closed the gap between us. Really? All around the foreign object I had myself inserted, his skin was turning into faded grays. Temptation whispered me to keep it inside and learn of all it could become in the coming days. Could one little thing cause him to decay? Was his body weaker than I presumed? He never seemed to feel much. The subject was ideal. But what right had I to abuse of this numbness of his? I took a breath and carefully removed the pen. He didn't wince. As gentle as I had ever been, I watched this part of him I had tainted. No color had returned. The hole disappeared. It became nothing but a secret we shared. I'm sorry. Don't. I'll come back tomorrow. I want to try something with your intestines. I pointed to his abdomen. You have intestines inside. We need a small part. Fearing the fascination that grew within me, I turned away, seemingly inspecting, keeping my eyes on my basket, my findings, my branches of varying lengths and widths. When he had no more stitches to tear, I looked back. My eyes relished in the pink of his organs. My fingertips itched to feel what they never had. My hands surrounded themselves with a pleasant warmth. He shivered that. Please don't tell me he's into this! Yes, I know, most of us love the idea of getting our insides rearranged, but not like this! I realized. I'm sorry. Forcing my hands on top of my chest, I steadied my breathing. You should cut it yourself. Rummaging through, I buried my heartbeats under other sounds until it seemed right for me to settle on one branch. About this size. His nails glistened. I shouldn't look. And you're still gonna look? Okay, we're looking away. Here, you could slide it in. He earnestly did, gliding and guiding the severed piece around. I didn't dare feel it myself. The mere act of watching was something I knew I should avoid. And so I tried. There. I reached for his sides. With your nails. It took all of me not to explore further. So tempting it was. But never rejecting any of the things I did, he made me hope for it all to be fine. But why would I ever hope for such things? He ripped his flesh. My mouth was too full of envy to offer him praise. All I could give was a small nod for him to proceed. The foreign enclosed-in familiar had been inserted. Granting him a smile was the least I could do. Did it look somewhat encouraging? I had no idea. The water was cool and its salt reviving. A couple drops stayed with me after the rest had left to heal the wound. How comforting. I straightened my back and took a step away. Be careful when you swim. Why? You may heal fast, but we don't know what could happen. You're leaving. Well, I can stay a bit more if you want me to. I sat down. Was my presence enough for him, or had he something to expect of me? Had he reasons other than fulfilling his wish for wings? After everything, I knew no one was ever fully worthy of trust. And I knew so little of him and his thoughts. We could never share ourselves wholly to one another. No one could ever. No one should ever. Now, did it truly matter? Did I really care? Could it be worse than what I had experienced from a being as human as myself and seemingly understanding in every way? Cold struck my ears. On both sides of my head were darkened arms, strewn with little stars. I'm sorry. He lowered them. My eyes followed. I never asked for your name. Don't have. Do you mind if I give you one? Does starling sound good to you? It's a bird you remind me of. Mine is lion. Lion. The sounds had a certain roughness I thought was to be expected. Yet, at the same time, his mouth gave them a softness I forgot they could possess. Lion? Yeah, this is how. The wind brushed against my skin. Lion. Breathing down my neck. I stood up. Lion? The name felt wrong in his mouth. Too honest. Too caring. We'll meet tomorrow. I promise. It's healed. I rushed to see for myself. You're right. Poking revealed nothing unusual. It had become a part of him. Jealousy crept in. Do you want to keep it? A gift for you. He placed the bleeding, pulsating, living arrangement in my palms. Pas un souvenir. It stuck and burnt and screamed. Too precious to drop. Mouth shut, I watched as he dived and jumped. Blood ran down, leaving no wound behind. Unbound, he beamed. Had it ever been so blinding? Thank you. As quickly as possible, I snatched whatever fabric I had packed earlier this morning, wrapped it around this peculiar gift, and buried it at the very bottom of my reliable basket. Now what? I did have a task to focus on. I found a larger branch to use. But before carrying it all the way here, I thought I'd ask. What do you think of using bones instead? Bones would make for a more appropriate continuation of his being. But did they possess the resistance needed to remain whole long enough? Especially if multiple ones had to somewhat be attached together. Eric himself had taught me how weak and breakable they could be. Bones or wood? I'd like you to choose. Wood. I'll need a moment then. When I came back an hour later with the branch I had settled on, it was exactly where I had left him. Do you know how to make nets? Yes. I handed him some cords I had made out of strips of the dress I yearned to drown. I'll start on the closer ends. He nodded. Picking a piece, I pressed the two extremities together. I let my fingers slide down until they reached the very middle. The curve went behind the branch, only to be pulled over. And there, the strands that used to be one were forced through. The knot felt too tight. It seemed wrongly placed, slightly off. Not enough for me to care. Having more to fasten, I folded another piece and carried on. Once they were all well and tied around, I could start a proper row of knots. As I took hold of the second and third string, I felt a tap on my shoulder. Yeah? He pointed to his side. His half had 2 series of even knots, waiting to be finished on mine. I'm sorry. I'll try to go faster. No. You can always try. I can do more. I will. Thank you. In a comfortable silence, we went back to our shared task. Silently, without facing resistance, I had been drawn so close to his abdomen I could count the stitches hiding his insides from my open eyes. Had it happened when I grew tired of feeling the rough strips of fabric against my fingers? When I let him finish my pot as I simply stared? Surely. We need enough intestines to cover the wood. His work was neat. So neat. How he would teach me had I the confidence to ask, I wondered. I couldn't seem to find any imperfections. Until I did. I noticed a loose bit of hair on his chest. It called for my nails. I didn't dare. Stepping back, I watched as he opened himself. My hands itched to feel. Can I? Touching a fraction had me curious for more. How long could it be? How many of its folds could I sense? Could I learn to recognize them all? My fingers ventured. Deep down, we both knew the pursuit to be vain. Yet, it didn't stop me from trying. It didn't stop them from inspecting and appreciating every part. There wasn't much I could process, but surely, feeling more would help. More and more. Lion. Lips on my collarbone. Please. I didn't mean to! Yeah, I'm sorry! Okay, seriously! Are you into this? 'Cause twice now I've touched your insides, and twice now you seem to get very excited about this. Let me... I pulled. The grating of his teeth filled my ears so clearly, I found my own echoing his. Length seemingly right, I stopped. You can cut it there. Steadying his breathing, he moved away until his organ was visible enough. With a calm and precision I wished I had, he severed the tube. Now, slice it lengthways. Be careful, we want it as one piece. The organ was extended down and held in place with our 3 hands combined. The fourth, his, began its work. It left a splayed-out shape behind, a sort of rectangle that grew longer and longer. When it couldn't anymore, Starling looked up. You know how to sew? I know. You can sew this around the branch. He helped me lay the wood and fold the pink. Do you have needles and pins? Pulling more of his skin away, he revealed 2 ribs bearing little bones with pointed tips. No doubt his abilities far surpassed mine. A shame, truly. I breathed. Twice. Thrice. As comfortably as I could on minerals, I sat. Knots had been tied, the thread had been secured, the needles had gone in and out. I had missed the first time. Now, I saw. The needles entering, the thread following, the organ closing. The act seemed too violent, the colors too vivid, the pain too real. My eyes shifted to his arms. Their skin splayed out would make for such an engrossing painting, a night sky full of stars within reach. I looked down. My skin was white, dry, disgustingly so. The only stars I could be said to possess were the peeling bits. By their nature, they were to come off. I had nothing but falling stars to myself. Anything that could make me more turned out to be unattainable. I found myself desperately looking for things that wouldn't fail me. Starling? His eyes found mine. My fingers reached for his stars. I covered 2 and opened my mouth. Surely they could fit. Yeah? Do you have more than tongues in your chest? Other bodies, too. There are other bodies for you to collect the tongues off? I covered a third. You keep more in other bodies? Both. Planted near his thumb, I noticed a needle. I glanced over at his work. Done. Can you show me? He gathered pins in his hand. How many? 4. One after the other, following the line of his cut. They closed his chest to prevent loss. Right back. There. They bore no traces of decay. Why do I just have tongues in my hand? Why are they here? Hello? Did you do something before storing them in other corpses? He simply pointed to his chest. How fascinating. To be so well preserved after the death of oneself. So red. So soft. My teeth urged me to bite into each of them. To taste each of them and more. They moved. What do you mean their tongues are moving? So full of life. How unlike anything I knew. What next? My palms were wet. Tainted by liquid envy. You can start sewing. I took 2 of the tongues he held and moved towards our structure laid out. Between knots, I placed 1. Higher, a second. This is how it should look like. Leave it to me. Thank you. I'll be sitting near. I believed he knew well enough what to do. He didn't need me there, scrutinizing. Even if he did, I wouldn't have been much of use to him. Unsure of how distracting it could be, I thought it was better for me to keep my questions sealed behind my lips. So now that we had spent time together without him ever going against my wishes, the thought of letting my curiosity and fascination loose against the needle he so comfortably wielded did not seem like such a bad idea. How did you learn? Mended clothes. Mine and the rest of the crew. You worked on a ship? Yeah. Did you? Wait, did it sink? Yeah. Is that how you ate? I'm sorry. I looked down. Forget it, please. They reminded me of fish scales. What kind of creature have you seen in the deep? They hide. It was to be expected. So, I run. You run after them? I catch them. To eat them? No. You simply run after them and kill them. With no other purpose than the hunt itself. You sound like a goddamn dolphin at this point. Simply Yep. Starling's a dolphin, confirmed. I had no reason to be surprised. It was natural. Could you show me? Maybe tomorrow or the day after. Yeah. Thank you. I turned my eyes towards the sea. The light of the setting sun was blinding. It prevented me from seeing what little I should of the water below. I had been granted the surface, the shallow, and even then, they had found ways of depriving me again. I missed the gentle bite of salt. If only it didn't avoid 2 of my fingers. The lack of pain was a bitter fact I could hardly accept. Having parts of me torn apart should have changed something, but they hadn't left much of a mark for me to care for. They simply weren't anymore. The wounds needed no time to heal. It wasn't very human, and it wasn't enough, but for now, it was all. And you? Why are you here? I was looking for a change of scenery. I needed something different. I needed something different and more. More? Yeah. I had no idea where or when to stop. I wasn't allowed to have more. This only deepened my desire. He worked while I lost myself. Together, in silence. 1 wing complete. You're quite fast. We now had 1 wing to test and 1 wing yet to be made. Could you turn around, please? I reached for the top of his spine and slowly made out the contours of his vertebra. Tracing along, I found his skin to be surprisingly soft. None of the occasional faded scars took much away from this fact. My tongue, longing for a taste, was to be kept down. God damn it! Is the MC in this feral too? I moved my fingertips away from the center to feel his shoulder blade. Near a set of deeper scars, I sensed a spot that felt right. Can you give me a right hand, please? Thank you? I carefully guided his nails until they were where they had to be. There. You can lie down. With both of my hands, I dragged the wing up to his back. Wood and intestines went into its very flesh, together as one. Pouring salt water, I let his skin close around to welcome the not quite foreign. How does it feel? Mine? I sure hope so. I dried and warmed my stinging hands against my skirt. Do you mind if I take care of your hair? You can. I dived into the uneven mass, trying to untangle it however I could. Once the result seemed satisfactory enough, I separated it into 3 pots. There, I started plaiting. Once the result seemed satisfactory enough, I separated it into 3 pots. There, I started plaiting. Have you ever considered trying or cutting it shorter? He shook his head, setting a couple strands free. If you want me to, I can teach you. No. He was free to decline. I had no reason to ask why. Wordlessly, I continued entwining what I held. Reaching the end, I pulled the last ribbon I owned out of my boot. He glimpsed at the white fabric, covered in stains of grass. Curious surely, yet he said nothing. There you go. It shouldn't get too caught in the tongues. Do you like it? Yeah. How new and refreshing it felt. No. In an instant, the ribbon was ripped and sent floating, soaking and drowning. Hair loosened, half made, he stared at a point somewhere behind me. He didn't unfasten the rest, nor did he explain himself. I looked back, only to find something that hadn't been there before. What are you seeing that I don't? No word, no motion. Had he even heard my voice? Slowly, as to prove myself to pose no threat, I made my way to his side and back. He was cold to the touch and unmoving still. I tapped on his skin. The color hasn't changed. The texture hasn't either. The wound had disappeared as we hoped it would. Starling? Lion? Yeah, it's me. How are you feeling? He turned and tied his arms around me. Starling, I need to breathe, please. His strength was no match for mine. It never had been. It never would be. Do you not miss me now? You ran so far. And for what? This was not the same. It couldn't be. Of course it isn't. You loved me. I did. I did? Wait, I don't want this! Caged by limbs, I grew sick while their number grew. He never had more than 2 arms and hands, yet I felt them everywhere. So much skin I didn't want against mine. So many nails I never wanted inside. Wounds I had tried to conceal from my own self split open once more. I was far more gentle, wasn't I? Was he? I don't think so! I had no desire to remember. What is there to remember when you have me to simply tell? Stop it. Please! Why would you want me to? Throat burning, mouth forced closed. I found that I couldn't bring my teeth back together. A familiar tongue played with my own, and I gave up, as I had nights before. Filled with cold and emptiness, I woke up. There was no sun in the sky to warm or glare at me. It had been replaced by a gentle moon and her shimmering light, bright enough to guide me in the dark. Sore all over from the time I had spent lying, I raised half of my body. Starling? No answer. His brows, his face, his everything was relaxed. How sweet you look when you sleep. How sweet indeed. Although not as much as myself. Starling, you should wake up. Would that not prevent you from running? Starling, we have another wing to make. Why not inspect the state of the one he already has? I need you to wake up, please. If asking fails, could you not try begging, my love? Starling, look at me! Speak to me, please. Why wait for his words? Take them yourself. Open him to find an answer. Isn't it quite simple, love? Is it? Trust me, it is. Nose against his stitches, I held my breath. Enough waiting. Teeth snatched the thread. They pulled and pulled until his insides were fully mine to see. Troubled eyes took his half-empty ribcage in. No matter how many were used, he never ran out of tongues. He dearly kept more of these discarded organs, forever deprived of their ability to lie. Throwing them away, I made space for myself. If only you could fit in that rotten cage of his. I can. I drowned his sigh in a sea of bones breaking. How weak you made him. I am sleeping inside of him, okay? My head could rest in his chest. My lips could soften his heart. A cheek of mine could lie on a lung of his. And I... Oh, suffocating. I didn't mean to. You didn't listen. His heart did not beat. I should have listened. You could listen now. I couldn't hear the waves hitting the shore. Are you finally ready to come home? I reached for the pieces of flesh I had detached. Of course you are. Closing them on ourselves, I freed myself from his words. You lied. The hell happened there? Okay, I don't know why, but the developer has made it so that the game picks bones or wood at random. And these are 2 very different routes, okay, with very different scenarios and very different CGs. So I am curious what happens in this route. Okay, bones. Then I'll let you pick them yourself. I'm not sure what you can find in the sea, but ideally, you should take the ones in better conditions. They have to be strong, though. Hunt! I forgot he could. I'll leave it to you. Alright. He came back, arms full of bones. They had been cleaned, separated from all they should have been connected to, and licked spotless. Creatures alive mere hours ago had been reduced to nothing. How frightened had they been? How innocent and unaware? Had they fought against their coming death? Had they been given enough time to fight against it at all, or to accept their end? I had no desire to know. We had to put their remains to use. I can only guide you for what's next. You're going to need some strands of hair and 2 bones. He pulled a number I wasn't close enough to count out of his sculpt. Find a way to wrap them around the end of the bones. I couldn't look at them for too long. To have them come and stay together. He seemed to have a decent idea of what had to be done. Letting him work, I shut my eyes. Is death so repulsive to you? Was it a terrible reminder of your regrets and their weight? I don't regret it. Lies do not suit you, love. You tried to hold a knife against me. It fell. You tried again. Again and again. No matter how many times you tried, the result remained the same. You failed. I did not! You very much did. Yes, it may be a secret you believe is deeply buried. But secret or not, buried or not, remember that it will always be shared. Pretend to be unaware as much as you want. I will never be. And I will stay by your side to remind you of it. Until death do us part. It's quite simple, really. It's not. I taught you a number of things. The truth is one I shouldn't even need to. You wanted to hurt me for not living up to your hopes and wishes. You knew I was living and right. You remembered and wavered. You utterly failed. You ran away from us and all we could be together. I didn't mean to. I'm sure. Lion? Rip parts of yourself however you want. Together with that night, I will forever be your own personal anchor. I'm sorry. Don't be. It's done. I looked over. 3 bones lay on the shore. In the middle, one was bound to another, smaller and larger. On its other side was a similarly long but thinner piece. Are they secure? Okay then. Now, do you know how to make nets? Yeah. I handed him the cords I made out of strips of the dress I yearned to drown, and I'm gonna skip ahead till something's different. How unfaithful of a wife you must be to give away the remains of your dress to another man like this. Will you give away your newborn too? My tongue bled under the hardly restrained strength of my teeth. Blood. My chest rose. I'm sorry. It fell. He looked tense, ready to jump. I stood up. His eyes followed my every move. Tomorrow. They burned through my ankles. See you then. His mouth held the most tempting abyss I had ever seen. I turned back. Basket in one hand, boots in the other. I ran. Crying of desire and pain, my feet led us back to the cave that had become our home. When we met again, we exchanged no words on the way we parted the day before. There were things I would never explain to anyone. And, for once, I did not feel the need to apologize. So, you know how to make nets? Yeah. How quick was he to forget? Or was it to forgive? It didn't matter. You can make one on the bones he tied yesterday. He got to work while I simply sat, not helping much. Truthfully, it stung. The feeling of uselessness echoed in the soles of my feet. I had wasted more water than I wished to on this matter. Every drop that had left one of my bottles brought me dread. I knew how to turn salt water drinkable with fire and proper receptacles. Still, using knowledge this way made the situation seem too real and wrong. To spare myself, I had dampened fabric to use on my wounds, and once cleared of the bits of earth that clung to me, I had wrapped my feet in cotton. Sadly, I lacked the ability to mysteriously heal. Whatever I tried to soothe their pain would never prevent them from reminding me of what happened. Every step forward forced memories inside my head, from a tainted past to a closer one. I had come to focus on Starling to keep the rest away. In him, I had hoped to find a monster, but he seemed much more human than I could have conceived. He looked half a man. This half could have been wholly consumed by the other. It had no right to be any more. He had no right to act like another. I had to escape. I had found something to hang on to. It was too far for it to turn out to be the same now. Lion? My knees hurt. Had I been crawling? I found my face so close to his abdomen I could count the stitches hiding his insides from me. We need another intestine to cover the bones. His work was neat. Too neat. It couldn't be. I looked over each, focused on one at a time, until I found, on his chest, a loose bit of hair. It begged for a canine of mine to fill the space. What? What do you mean? What do you mean? Wait. Now I get choices? Don't resist. I listened. I went in and cared. A part of me waited for him to scream and reject my being. A smaller part of it wanted to see how violent he could be. He simply moaned! What do you mean he moaned? I wouldn't linger. Skin followed and fell. Tongues did too. I did not care. Pushing my hands in, I started looking for an end to grab onto. Under my fingers, he grew green and my desires grew all the same. I pressed and trailed along every part of him I could reach. Echoing throughout his body were sounds and shivers he was unable to control. I savored each and every. I would have continued for long, if it weren't for his vain attempts at calling my name. His weakened state soothed my hot and wounded feet. I found what I needed and pulled. The relief in his voice was palpable. I pulled some more until the length seemed right. Cut there. He did as told. And in control, I breathed. Slice it lengthways? Be careful. We want to keep it in one piece. The organ was extended down and held in place with our 3 hands combined. The fourth, his, began its work. It left a splayed-out shape behind, a sort of rectangle that grew longer and longer. When it couldn't anymore, Starling looked up. You know how to sew. I know. You're going to sew this around the bones. Lay the bones you fixed on top. Fold the pink. See where you should sew? Yeah? Great. Pulling more of his skin away, he exposed 2 ribs, bearing little bones with pointed tips. No doubt his abilities far surpassed mine. A shame, truly. I trust you, Yvette. Do you remember how I once ripped my sleeve? How sweet you found me then. Then, you sewed it back however you could. You listened to my descriptions of trees and leaves, with so many textures and colors to paint, so many illustrations to look forward to. It was endearing, wasn't it? It was. You had trust and hopes. I had. You failed to understand this. You failed to accept me. You lost it all. It never should have been. Would you tell such a thing to your younger self? No. How well aware you are. It was bound to happen. You needed us as much as you needed me. And as much as you regret our past, you wouldn't change it. Starling was almost done. Do you have more tongues in your chest? Other bodies too. There are other bodies for you to collect the tongues of. This is still a weird detail. He tied a knot. You keep more in other bodies? Both. In the skin near his thumb, he planted the needle. Can you show me? He gathered the pins in his hand. How many? 2 or 3. One after the other, following the line of his cut. They closed his chest to prevent loss. Right back. And he's leaving to bring me more tongues. There. They bore no traces of decay. So full of life they seemed. Part of me expected them to move. Back to the mouths they belonged to. How many could have belonged to your womb? How many could you have given birth to? How many could we have seen grow into their adult form? None. Our children have no tongue, no heart, no blood, no throat. You gave nothing. You took their right to be born. You kept it all. I'm sorry. They simply felt more real than I thought. I think you can start sewing them onto the net now. Leave it to me. Thank you. I won't be sitting too far, in case you need me. I turned my eyes towards the sea. It sparkled under the sun. The light was too much for me. I looked down to the water near. Do you truly believe this lack of ring rendered our vows null and void? I didn't think you so foolish, my love. How could I ever believe such a thing? How could you ever, indeed? No matter the distance, you hold me in your heart. You don't need my body next to yours to be able to hear my voice. That is how well you remember me. That is how well you know me. Or do you really? I couldn't have known. Isn't it precisely why I had to teach you? You needed to learn from me. Even now, you need me. Something tells me that Eric was very abusive in our relationship. Or am I just reading this wrong? I just have an inkling of a feeling here, because for her to hear his voice so often, even like in this horrifying situation, tells me she ain't all that okay. The world is too wide for you to pointlessly roam. You need me to help you. To guide you was to love you. I cared and care for you. You can't. With time, you will come to realize. You were too hurt and lost then. How long can you go on this way? How long can you run without my love? I can and will welcome you back with open arms. You can't see how much of my heart is kept for you. For your entire being and the children that have yet to grow. I trust that one day you will open yourself to us again. We belong to one another. Can you truly belong to me now? Can I put you on a leash and make you regret what you did? Is there something you need? What's a leash? I'm just imagining, like, MC just, like, going off on this monologue and Starling's just like, what are you even talking about here? A sort of necklace. You need? No, I don't. Standing up, I glanced at his work. I'll let you continue. We'll meet tomorrow. One wing complete. You're quite fast. We now had one wing to test and one wing left to be made. Turn around. I reached for his scars and the one that had surely been but disappeared. Tracing along, I found myself wanting to mark him some more, to take away his healing and leave him with something lasting. My fingers went over 5 darker spots near his shoulder blade. They were of a green I couldn't allow my eyes to see. Your right hand, please? I led him to the right spot, guided his nails, and raised my voice. There. Lie down. With both of my hands, I dragged the wing full of tongues. Bones and intestine went in, covering the repulsive scar. As always, he showed no sign of pain. Pouring salt water, I let his skin close around to welcome the not quite foreign. How does it feel? Mine. I sure hope so. All right. Knuckles red, I dried myself on my skirt before taking a hold of his hair. Too much to comb. Please, keep your head straight. Fairly evenly, I divided the tangled mess he possessed in 3. The left section went over the middle. The right one went over what used to be the left, and the middle regained its place. Do you ever miss my plaiting of your hair? I crossed and crossed the strands. How many pretty ribbons had I adorned you with? I kept crossing. Do you remember how fond of them you were? They're well kept and waiting for your return. I tore a lone strand, folded it in half, and tied it around the end. It was tighter than I wanted it to be. What a shame. There you go. It shouldn't get too caught in the tongues. I'll come back in a couple of days. How many? 4, maybe? Tomorrow. 4. If you are so desperate, you can always make the other in the meantime. You can do it on your own. I taught you how to. All you need me for is the inspecting and the inserting. That's all. Is it truly all? In no time, he crushed my wrist and pulled me towards him. Can't be all. See? Stop! He dragged me into his waters. Please, stop! It felt familiar. Not again! Disgusting. Unclean. Please! You never learn. I'm sorry, I really am. I'll do better, I promise! Please! He jumped in, and I sank against my will. What an anchor he makes. I didn't resist. I simply couldn't. I let the sea fill my lungs. I let the salt burn my throat. I let my body grow desperate for air. There was no more for me to breathe. Nothing for me to live. Nothing for me to be. Nothing more. Enough is enough. It didn't have to end this way, but you betrayed us both. You should have listened. Humming, the creature swam back to his most cherished possession. She had been cut open and emptied, bloodied and licked clean, undressed and dressed in finer clothing. Now, she made for a perfect doll, one Eric could have been tempted to paint. If only she hadn't freed herself from him. If only she hadn't died at the hands of another. She could have been a woman, his wife, a mother. She had become a lifeless being, about to remarry. Innocent and overflowing with happiness, her future husband opened his mouth. From it, he drew out a necklace of pearls. Each had been lovingly collected and separated from the others by knots tied with all the care he had. What lion needs, I make. He didn't ask for her to move her hair away. He had learned to do it himself. The necklace went around, not too close to her skin, so she could breathe. He tied it and stared at his work. Her white dress, the leash around her neck, the 2 peacefully closed eyes she had left. How pretty. Both unseeing, they kissed. Anyway, that was Hold Your Tongues. I really hope you guys enjoyed it. If you guys do want to play this for yourselves, link to the game will be in the description below. And yeah, gotta say, I love this game, okay? I love the way it's written, and it's very visceral. Beyond the actual gore that's actually shown on screen, some of the subject matter it's referencing, like some of the things that MC has gone through, it's just absolutely terrifying to even think about. Like, I did feel uncomfortable, and that's a great job on the developer itself. And also, like, did y'all catch the hint that she did not want to be here in the first place? Like, she was led here by her own desires, but like, God, somebody tells me she did not want to be here. God. Anyway, thank y'all so much for watching. Hope y'all have a lovely rest of the day, and as always, I'll be seeing you in the next video. This is Lion, signing off. Ciao.